Nomad whizzed a little too close to a rock formation. At these speeds, a small miscalculation would cause a big explosion. Unfortunately, just when Nomad was sure he was about to win, they burst out into an open section of the Canyonlands. Surrounded by mesas and peaks, this flatter region was essentially the floor of a large crater. That let the scout maximize his speed. Their cycles were matched in that regard, so Nomad stayed in close pursuit, but there was little he could do if he caught up. He needed to... A geyser of brilliant orange-red heat sprayed flakes of fire, ash, and soot. Sparks washed over the front of Nomad's cycle and kept burning, even when the wind should have extinguished them.
Damnation, the knight exclaims, voice full of emotion. The surprised kind.
The scout probably should have taken them higher to avoid the eruptions, but he wasn't thinking clearly, it seemed. Instead, he turned, trying to swing out closer to the steep crater walls, perhaps thinking the ground might be more stable there. Another section of stone hurled chunks of melting rock into the air. They fell around the cycles, shattering on the ground and bursting like fireworks. Nomad broke off from direct pursuit as an entire wall of fire erupted from the ground just ahead. A wave of crimson stone that sloshed back down, parts of it immediately blackening and slumping like wax. Other parts kept glowing, like the heat of life itself. He swerved around the obstacle, barely spotting another eruption from the ground in time to dodge it. Reluctantly, he pulled upward, out of the dangerous region high into the sky. There, he resumed his pursuit, but the scout was far ahead. Too far. He'd almost reached the far side of the crater. Where... A shot of light from above blasted the man off his cycle. The body dropped, sending the machine itself tumbling across the earth in a dusty end-over-end collapse. Nomad looked up to see Rebecca on her cycle a short distance ahead of him, rifle to her shoulder. Right. He had told her to get ahead, hadn't he? He pulled up next to her, heart racing. What had caused those geysers of magma? They were basically as far from the sunlight as one could get. This should be the most tectonically stable region of the planet, though maybe none of it was all that stable. Extreme convection or tidal forces might cause all kinds of issues with the crust breaking and... Nope. Stop. None of that. He wiped his brow.
Your planet is rather emotional, isn't it? Never met one that I could rightly say has tantrums.
She barely seemed to be paying attention. She stared down at the fallen scout.
Rebecca?
She looked at him.
I shot him.
Storms, was that your first time?
She nodded.
I've shot before. At people. Never hit, though. I'm a hunter. All of us who can shoot are hunters. It's how we get meat. But to shoot at people... I mean, the Cinder King's people do it. But it's always seemed so... awful.
And you're right again, the knight tells him, about the hunters. How do you do it?
A lifetime of paying attention.
I don't feel different, but I feel like I should. Does that make sense?
My first time was with a spear. I had to keep fighting. Didn't even get time to pause as his blood ran down onto my fingers.
He shook his head.
That night, at Stew, it just felt like a surreal day of training. I barely remembered the moment itself.
She nodded.
She seems comforted, the knight notes, even though the squire didn't say anything actually helpful.
Knowing you aren't strange is helpful. Knowing others felt like you did. Sometimes it's the only thing that is helpful.
Why do you do that? Talk gibberish sometimes?
It's my own language. In other places, Rebecca, people speak all kinds of words you wouldn't recognize.
But why speak it now, when nobody can understand?
I'm offering prayers to one of the ancient gods of my realm.
Please no, the knight says. I'm no god. I work for a living.
Nomad checked to make certain his cycle had some flight time left, then nodded down toward the crash.
Come on, let's go check on him.
Why? He's dead.
Lesson number 1 about being a killer, Rebecca. Always make sure.